Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to England once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good couple of times before. Recently I've had two very nice beers from these guys, but before that the last beers that I reviewed from this brewery came back in 2013, so I went about 7 years between reviews for this brewery, which is just kind of crazy to be honest with you. But the one we're going to try today is supposed to be very good, and this brewery are getting a lot of hype at the moment, and based on the last two beers I reviewed from them, I would say that that is quite well justified actually. So for this review then, we are going to head down to London once again, Tottenham Hale in the north of the city to be specific, and we're going to have a look at my fifth beer from Pressure Drop Brewing. So this one is called Donatella's Disco Night. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and it's a New England Hazy Double IPA, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I'm guessing from the pizza on the can and the name of this beer, although I'm sure it was Donatello rather than Donatella. O in Italian is masculine, A is feminine. But yeah, I'm guessing that this one is a little bit of a reference to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Classic stuff. But yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. My second New England IPA from this brewery. The last beer that I reviewed from these guys was called It's My Party and I'll Cry If I Want To. That was a big pastry stout, granola pastry stout type thing, which was really nice. Before that it was the Alligator Tugboat, which was a Simcoe New England IPA, if I remember rightly. And then the two way back in 2013, it was the Stokie Brown and also the oh, the Fryman's Dunkelweiss, that was it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is my fifth beer from these guys. All of them have been very good. I do remember that those two back in 2013 were good, but the two most recently have been very impressive actually. So fingers crossed this one carries on in the same vein as those, and if you do get the chance to try some of the beers from Pressure Drop, I do recommend that you get that done. This is one that I bought from the House of Trembling Madness in York. Awesome beer shop if you can get there physically. Otherwise they've got a great web shop there. Huge selection. One of the best value web shops you're going to find in England according to the English beer tubers, so definitely check that out if you get the chance. But yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. Hopefully it's another interesting beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So let's see how we get on. The Donatella's Disco Night, 8.5% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, double IPA from Pressure Drop Brewing down in London. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Pressure Drop Brewing already, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I am back home in the motherland of Scotland for an extended period of time, and we've got easy access to all the English stuff, which is never a bad thing. Great beer scene down there these days. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Pressure Drop Brewery then, on to my brewery notes. So Pressure Drop Brewing was founded back in 2012 by Bren Freeman, Graham O'Brien and Sam Smith. So Graham and Sam have apparently known each other since their school days, and they met Ben during his time at London Fields Brewery, and there's a lot of people apparently have gone through London Fields Brewery and on to other things inside the London craft beer scene. They've got a really solid scene down there incidentally. But apparently they homebrewed together on a 50-litre brew kit in Graham's shed during the Olympic summer back in 2012, and then they moved into a railway arch in Bohemia Place in Hackney later in the year. So at this stage they were brewing on a 5-barrel kit, and they just gradually expanded up this brewery over the next few years. Quite soon though, and with various issues arising from their equipment, they decided that they were going to have to move on, and so they began scouting out new locations in 2015. They eventually settled on a site in Tottenham Hale, on which they have a 10-year lease, and they began brewing there in 2017. But these days they're operating a 20-barrel brew kit, and they've gradually just been building up the fermentation capacity and the infrastructure of this brewery. They've got a tap room on site, and as of January 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, they've produced around 120 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So they have been pretty prolific over the years. You know, that's a ratio of maybe about 20 different beers a year actually, so one new beer every couple of weeks. But yeah, as I said, I've had really nice beers from these guys over the last little while. Alligator Tugboat, the one that I got apparently was a rebrew, according to Adam from Mersey Beers, and you know, he knows his stuff, so we'll trust him on that. But yeah, they have some of the beers that turn out to be really popular. I think they bring them back, so that's, you've got a ratio of about 20 beers per year, which is pretty decent actually. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Pressure Drop Brewing for the moment. That was all the information I was really able to find on these guys. So yeah, they're based very close to where Beavertown are based as well actually. So Tottenham Hale seems to be a little bit of a beer hub actually, along with the likes of Bermondsey and a few other places in London. But yeah, railway arches are very, very popular for starting breweries in different cities in England. But yeah, that's, as I say, all I can really tell you about Pressure Drop Brewing for just now. If you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer itself then. So I'll just let you have a little quick look at the artwork before we open it up. As I said earlier, I do suspect that this is a reference to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The mistake though would be that it's Donatello, not Donatella. A in Italian is feminine, O is masculine. So yeah, it'd be quite strange to have a, unless it's referring to somebody else of course, and it's a joke, I don't know. But yeah, the pepperoni Pete's on there, always the best, love that. But yeah, there you can see Pressure Drop Brewing symbol there, and it tells you a little bit about the beer on the back as well. So it says tropical fruit basket hops take it all the way to Hawaii and back, and it says the hops in this one are Idaho 7, Mosaic and Brew 1. So Idaho 7, as we know, gives you some really lovely soft tropical fruits. I think that's about a 14% alpha acid hop if I remember rightly. Mosaic is a big kind of tangerine-y orangey thing, and then Brew 1 that it has as well is, I think Brew 1 gives you a lot of pineapple if I remember rightly. But yeah, Mosaic and Idaho 7 are about 14% alpha acid. I think Brew 1 might be like 12 or something. I think Brew 1 is a little bit lower in its alpha acid. But yeah, New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, double IPA. This one, 8.5% ABV, 440ml can. I think I paid, you know, about £6 or something like that for this, maybe a little bit less, because you know the House of Trembling Madness is pretty damn cheap actually. I think that's a very, very good beer shop, so maybe about £5 or something like that. Let's say £5. So if I paid £5 for this, that translates to roughly about €6, maybe $7 American. And then for those of you watching in Sweden, because I know there's a lot of you, £5 will be roughly about, you know, 60. Yeah, about 60 Swedish krona, somewhere in that kind of region, a little bit less. But yeah, nicely presented beer, this one. The artwork is pretty cool. Pepperoni pizza, you can't go wrong. So without further ado, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. So let's go for it. That does look very, very nice. Yeah, there we go. I think we're going to be able to get the full thing in here. I just rinsed out this glass as well and I'm getting all the stuff, the carbonation sticking to the side of it. It's annoying. It just goes to show you though how sensitive beer actually is. But I'll tell you something, when you open this beer up, you've got a lovely big hoppy aroma, big fruity aroma coming out of this one. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so you can see all the carbonation sticking to the edge of the glass. I just washed it and rinsed it just a little bit before doing the video. That's annoying. But yeah, as you can see with this beer, this one is poured a lovely, kind of quite bright, I would say very, very rich yellow colour, although it does have just a wee hint of an amber kind of thing in the centre, to be honest with you. But yeah, if we're comparing this to the fruit juices, as I always like to do with these New England IPAs, this one is like a very kind of bright mango juice, I would say. A lovely kind of bright, rich mango juice colour for me. But you can see that when we poured this beer, there was about a half finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head on this one. That's faded away to just be a very, very thin foamy layer, but there is a nice little bit of a kind of thicker ring around the edge of the glass. But yeah, in terms of colour, much like a big kind of mango juice. And remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on two things. One, the type of malts you use, two, the length of boil that you do for the wort. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised and you get a darker colour out of it. But again, that depends on the type of barley malts and stuff that you use in the first instance. But yeah, the haziness of this beer is pretty damn impressive as well. And usually the haziness is you know, it's dependent on the oats and the wheat that you have in the beer and the ratios of those. So theoretically speaking, as you go up the alcohol scale, you should get more haziness out of the beer, but that's not always the case. This one, in fairness, does look quite soupy and gloopy further down, but yeah, it looks like a little bit, doesn't look quite as soupy and gloopy up near the top. But then again, you know, the light can pass through it a little bit more easily there. But in terms of a New England IPA, it certainly looks very impressive. You can see, if I put my fingers behind the glass there, this one does have a fairly impressive level of haze to it. So yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. New England Hazy Double IPA, so it certainly looks the part from my perspective. But yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one and see how we get on. Very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us, and I can get little whiffs of the fruit off this already, and I will say I think this one is going to be pretty special in that sense. So yeah, let's go for it and see how we get on. That is pretty nice, actually. Yeah, it's very well balanced, this beer, very kind of soft, inviting beer, and that's one of the things with these double IPAs. Some of them can just be stupidly drinkable and cover their alcohol ridiculously well, and this one, I've got a feeling, might kind of lean towards that end of the spectrum. But some of them can surprise you, some of them can be hiding a little bit more of a kind of wheat pungency, to be honest with you. But this beer does smell absolutely lovely. Juicy fruits galore, you know, lovely soft bready notes. So yeah, let's try and break that down a little bit more. But yeah, when you take the aroma of this one a little bit more deeply, you do get a wee bit of bitiness from the wheat at the very back of your nose. But overall, I would say that the malty side of this beer, it really leans towards a soft, kind of white bready character. You can get a little bit of the oaty smoothness out of this one. There's something telling me that there might be a little touch of Pilsner malt or something in this beer as well, just to give you a wee bit of crispness. I just get... Pilsner malt's really annoying to describe in terms of aroma, but it just gives you a little bit of a vibe, and I'm getting some of that just crispness out of this beer, and I don't think that's the bitiness of the wheat. But yeah, when you go back from the beer a little bit, you can smell a little bit of that kind of thicker, almost, is it right to say turbidity? You can smell just a little bit of that kind of very, very thick kind of thing from the wheat coming out of the beer. You get a little bit of the Pilsner malty vibe as well, some soft white bread in there. You can get the oats a little bit, but I think the oats take a back seat in this one. I think the malty side of this beer really starts to lean more towards the kind of white bready notes, and it just gets crisper and crisper the more that you smell of it, actually. But yeah, there is a wee bit of that oaty kind of smoothness to this one, for sure. But I don't get much of the kind of butter candy Werther's Original thing that you can sometimes get out of these beers. I don't get so much of that in this one. Again, it comes across as quite... it comes across as sort of quite crisp and white bready in that sense. So it's a really interesting beer, this one, I have to say. There's a lot of really interesting points to take away from this one, for sure. But yeah, the malty side of this beer, I think, is very nicely done. So I'm curious to see how that translates into the actual flavour profile, because it's soft and white bready, little touch crisp, good little bit of wheatiness from it, and I think the wheat builds, but you can also just smell a little bit of the oats. Does it tell you if there's... what exactly the malt baseness? No, it just says barley, oats and wheat. So yeah, all three of them in the malt base here, and to be honest, that makes sense. But we'll try this one and the malt base will come across completely differently. I bet you that's what will happen with this one now. Sometimes they match very well with the aroma, and then sometimes you get ones that just do not, and they don't give you they just give you nothing like what you expected in the malt base. But yeah, the malt base does, generally speaking, smell quite soft and quite bready. But on the hoppy side of things then, and that's where our focus should be with these New England IPAs. On the green side of things, you do get a tiny little hint of earthiness there, but for me, it's quite a fresh sort of floral aromaticity that you get out of this one. Not madly deep and aromatic as you can sometimes get, but a very bright and very fresh kind of floral aromaticity to the beer. There's a good little bit of grassiness coming out of this one as well, which is very, very nice. A lovely kind of soft grassiness to the beer, which I very much like. And if you take the aroma in, again, a little bit more deeply, you'll get one or two little kind of more dusty, dry hopping-y type notes out of the beer. You can smell a little bit of that green hop dust quality to it. But yeah, lovely, soft, but still quite bright floral aromaticity, nice grassy notes in there as well. The beer, generally speaking, just comes across as very fresh and soft. You've got that soft bready note in there, soft kind of green, grassy components to it, and then also some lovely, just juicy fruits out of it. It's a beautiful smelling beer, this one, I have to say. And it's only when you take it in a bit more deeply you get a bit of the kind of dry hop, the dusty dry hopping kind of thing out of it, and also some of that bitey, wheaty element as well. So yeah, I certainly like how this goes together. Absolutely. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, again, it comes across as really very soft and very juicy. There's a lot of kind of papaya for me with this one. A lot of papaya, maybe like a wee bit of guava and apricot and things like that. These very, very soft tropical fruits. And for me, that's the Idaho 7. It's going to give you that. I always associate Idaho 7 with these very, very soft tropical fruits. There's a lot of pineapple in there as well, and that's the Brew 1. Brew 1 I've had a couple of times before, and I remember it being really soft and really pineapple-like. So yeah, you get a lot of the pineapple. It's this beer I think really leans towards the kind of tropical side of things, to be honest. It's the Idaho 7 and the Brew 1 for me that are really kind of coming out of the aroma in this one. Underneath though, if you take the aroma in just that little bit more deeply, you'll get the kind of oily tangerine notes from the Mosaic though. It's quite nice how that goes together, absolutely. So yeah, the aroma of this beer is lovely. Very, very soft and just very inviting New England Double IPA for me. Soft, juicy fruits, mainly tropical but a little bit of an orangey, tangerine kind of quality in there. Some softer grassy notes and a little bit floral, and also some nice kind of soft malty qualities as well. So yeah, I really like how this one goes together in terms of its aroma. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and just enjoy that aroma before you get stuck into the beer. But we're going to taste this one now. Very curious about this. So yeah, Donatella's Disco Night, 8.5% New England Double IPA, Idaho 7 Mosaic and Brew 1. I think this is going to be quite interesting. So let's go for it. This one from Pressure Drop in Tottenham Hale in the north of London. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's a lovely, lovely IPA. Thumbs up to Pressure Drop Brewing. I mean, the Alligator Tugboat was really, really nice. This one for me absolutely tops it, I have to say, though. I really like how this goes together. Absolutely. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful beer. You know, as I said in the Alligator Tugboat, if these two IPAs are any kind of marker or any kind of benchmark for the other stuff that they've been producing, I can see exactly why they're getting a lot of hype at the moment. The stout beer that we tried was also really nice, I have to say, as well. But this one gets a massive thumbs up with me. The other beer was good, but I think this one is just really nicely done. Sometimes you get beers that just kind of strike you as being, you know, really well done, and this one it's one of these ones that has just kind of struck me on the palate there. What I will say as well though is it's one of these ones that is quite similar to what you would expect from the aroma, to be honest. This one is very, very similar to that actually. So yeah, just take a little bit of time and ponder that over when you're first sipping the beer. But it's a lovely just soft and drinkable New England Double IPA, this one. It's stupidly drinkable for its alcohol content, let's just say that. So yeah, lovely, lovely stuff. So where to start with this one then? Where to start with it? So straight away with this beer, in the middle of your palate, you're going to get that lovely kind of pale malty quality that just blankets the middle of your tongue. You can get that right there, just forming the backbone of the beer. What I said about the kind of Pilsner malt, I'm not overly convinced about that in this one. I thought there might have been just a little tiny touch of Pilsner malt in this beer to give you the, you know, just to give you a wee bit of crispness in this one. But I think it is a kind of pale malt base that's coming in this one. I don't think the oats are overly prominent in this beer. You get a little bit of oat coming out of it in the aftertaste, but yeah, the malt base for me is more kind of barley malt orientated. The wheat does have a little bit of presence, but yeah, this is mainly a barley malt orientated New England IPA for me, absolutely. And remember, there's a few different directions you can take these New England IPAs in. You can make them a little bit more yeasty and farmhousey. You can make them a little bit more rye-like, which I think is what alchemists do. You've got the oaty leaning ones, you've got the wheat leaning ones, and then you've got the barley malt leaning ones. So for me, there's 5 kind of directions that you can take a New England IPA in, and this one for me is a more barley malt orientated one, and this suits everything else that's going on in it actually. This is a little bit more kind of like an old school one, to be honest. I mean, in Sweden and Denmark recently they've been making these beers a lot more sweeter and kind of brown sugary orientated, and this one for me is a lot more kind of old school New England. It's kind of like if you took this style back to say 2015 or something, and maybe that's why I enjoy it. I always liked the, you know, the Narangis and the amazing hazies and stuff like this, and this one is quite similar to those, to be honest with you. So Sorry about the edit there, guys. I got disturbed, upset my flow, so we're back at it then. So like I was saying then, this is quite a barley malt orientated New England IPA for me, and it just, you know, it just works. It really just works, this beer. So let's try and just break down that flavour a little bit more and see how we go. So yeah, in the middle third of your palate then with this one, you can feel that nice sort of white bready quality just blanketing the middle of your tongue there. It does have a wee bit of bite to it in the beginning, in fairness. You can get a little bit of that booziness out of it. But otherwise, it really develops to become very, very soft, and you start to get the oats coming out of this beer further into the aftertaste that you go in that middle part of your palate. But yeah, soft, white bready base to the beer in that middle third of your palate. As you go towards the kind of border region between that middle third and back third of your palate, it's still really soft and bready. That thing I was saying about perhaps there being Pilsner malt in this one from the aroma, based on the flavour, I would wipe that comment, not true. But yeah, when you go into that back third of your palate then, you can feel that it just thickens up a wee bit, and you've got a lovely, almost quite fluffy, wheaty quality out of this one. It's a really, really soft, just bready orientated New England IPA for me. The wheat, sorry, at the very back of the palate, it does have a wee tiny little bit of bitiness to it, but it's almost like a the wheat in this beer is just really, really soft. So that back third of your palate just feels very, very soft and fluffy, and it's a little bit thicker almost, which I really, really like. But then it's not the smoothest, actually. Some of these wheat parts in the beer on the back third of the palate, they'll be very, it'll almost be like they're very kind of dense almost, and just very smooth, but this one really feels very kind of airy and fluffy almost, which is quite interesting. It's an interesting way of bringing out the wheat in the beer. But yeah, as you come kind of further forward and you reach that kind of border region going into the middle third of your palate, you can feel the thickness just drop away a little bit, and there is a wee touch of a kind of grainy, sort of boozy kind of thing in that border region there. But then as you move further forward, the soft breadiness is a little bit more kind of condensed, if you like. It's a little bit more dense in that middle third of your palate, and then you've got in the very centre of your tongue, you can feel a little bit of the kind of nice, slightly sweet and smooth oaty qualities there. They come out a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste, and there is just a little hint of that kind of, there is just a wee hint of that. It's a little bit McVitie's digestive biscuity like, but it's also a little bit like a kind of Werther's Original sort of thing. These are the alcohol flavours coming out there. It is a little bit kind of brown sugary. In fairness, there might be a very slightly brown sugary orientated malt in this one, but I think it might just, I've got a feeling just from the prominence of the bread in this, I think it might be just, you know, it could be a little bit of Cara Munich. That's the first thing that springs to mind. There might well just be a little bit of Cara Munich in this one to kind of bolster that a little bit. But yeah, most of the brown sugary elements I think are coming from the booziness of the beer rather than directly from the malts, if that makes sense. So the alcohol comes from the sugars in the malts, you know what I mean. It's got a wee bit of that boozy brown sugar note to it, but then it's got a little bit of the lighter kind of Cara Munich. So yeah, nice kind of smooth oaty note underneath that, like I said, and the oats just gain a little bit more prominence the further that you go into the aftertaste. The malt base for me is really quite straight shooting in a lot of ways. It's not madly complex, but that suits the beer. It really does. It's the breadiness and the sort of airiness of the wheat, if you like, that really make this beer quite unique for me. So thumbs up to Pressure Drop Brewing for this one. This beer strikes me as just being a little tad unique, to be honest. So yeah, that's what you want after 2,600 odd beer reviews. That is what you want. You want something that's going to make you think a little bit. So yeah, very barley malt orientated malt base for me, and I think that suits it. Maybe the yeast is playing a role as well, right enough. I wish they would put the yeast type that they use on these beers, because the yeast can contribute a huge amount to different beers, of course, and we've learned that over the years. So I would like to know, you know, is it a London Fog, is it a Lallemand, you know, a White Labs yeast, what is it? I'd be curious to know that. But yeah, lovely malt base in this one, so thumbs up to them. But yeah, on top of that kind of soft malt base though, the beer is just really juicy. So on the green components of the things then, in the back corners of the palate, the very back corners of the palate, you get a nice little touch of earthiness there. That's most likely to be the Mosaic that's giving you that. I wouldn't be surprised if there's maybe another bittering hop in this one, but in fairness, you know, this beer is not overly bitter, and the New England IPAs generally speaking are not bitter, so you don't have to do too many early edition hops in these kind of beers. But yeah, a little bit of earthiness there, and as you move further forward, you do get a little bit more. It's got quite a bright and rich floral aromaticity to it, this one. It's not overly spicy, it's not bitter, if you like, it's just got a lovely kind of brightness as you kind of go along the front sides of your palate there. It does have a wee bit more bitiness to it on the front corners of the palate, but you always get that, and then round the front curve of the tongue, it's got a lovely, very, very soft grassiness, in fairness, and I really like that about this beer for sure. So yeah, it's got a nice, it really has a very nice quality to it, this beer. Yeah, it's it really is very solid, that one. I think the more that I drink of this, if you take a slightly bigger gulp of it, you do get a little bit more zestiness in that grassy component of the beer. So yeah, I really like how that one goes together for sure. It's just, this is one of these beers where everything just slots together very, very nicely actually. So big thumbs up to Pressure Drop Brewing for this. They've pulled off an awesome beer with this. As I say, the green component goes together very, very well. You do get a little bit more bitterness and things like that out of it the further you go into the aftertaste, and that just adds a good little bit of contrast to everything else, which is a little bit kind of softer almost. So yeah, lovely, lovely beer this. But yeah, as I always say, on that front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those just juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. If you go towards the back of that kind of front third of your palate, if you like, on that border region, it does have a wee bit of kind of almost graininess and things in there once again, but then you get a wee bit of a strong passion fruit there, but then it very quickly mellows out to be more, it's like it's a little bit grapefruit. I'm sure I've heard the descriptor kind of pink grapefruit for Idaho 7 before, and I could see that, to be honest with you, because it's a little bit more kind of, oh, what's the word? It just doesn't quite feel like passion fruit, if that makes sense. It's just got a wee bit more sharpness to it, if that makes sense. Not tart or anything, just a little bit sharper. So maybe it is like a kind of pinky grapefruit, and then some passion fruit in there, or a mixture of both, something like that. But then yeah, as you move further forward from that, you've got a nice kind of juicy, soft mango-y quality in there. You'll start to get, as you go further into the aftertaste, apricots and these kind of papaya, these very, very soft things. These for me are the trademarks of Idaho 7, but you also get a lovely kind of pineapple-y note from the Brew 1 coming out of this one. But I think Brew 1 is making the pineapple just a little bit more kind of oily and adding it, almost adds a little bit of zest into the beer as well actually. But then as you reach the front half of that very front third of your tongue, that's when you get the more oily tangerine notes from the mosaic as well. These three hops actually fit together very, very well. It's a very kind of citrusy, it has got a good bit more citrus when you go further into the aftertaste. It really starts to lean towards that, a bit of a lemony citrus, and then the juice, the kind of more oily, juicy tangerines from the mosaic. So I think the Brew 1 might well be adding a little bit of a lemony citrus to this beer, because I don't remember Idaho 7 having that, and I don't remember Mosaic having it. So perhaps the Brew 1 is kind of just giving you a little bit of a lemony edge, as well as that kind of, you know, trademark pineapple-y note. But it's a lovely, lovely soft fruitiness that you get from this, just with a wee bit of a citrusy zip to it when you go further into the aftertaste, like I said. But that fruitiness, that soft fruitiness, really suits everything else that's going on in the beer. So well done to Pressure Drop in this one. It's very, very nice actually. Yeah, lovely, lovely tasting beer, I have to say. Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Yeah, if you like a kind of old school, you know, 2015 type citrusy leaning IPA, I think this one, it really does get more and more citrusy, I think. The more that I drink of it, in fairness. If you really like this kind of thing, this beer is going to suit you down to the ground. The Alligator Tugboat was good, but I think this one's on the next level up. So yeah, thumbs up to them for this. I really, really like this one. Yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, I think we've covered the flavour profile as much as we kind of need to be honest with you. But in terms of the mouthfeel, this is one of these double IPAs that's stupidly easy to drink. It's got a very It's the mouthfeel for me is just very, very kind of soft and smooth. Actually, it's a very, very smooth New England double IPA. So yeah, lovely bready malt base, like I said. You've got the bready character is actually just it is just really, really very, very soft and straightforward actually. So I really, really appreciate that about this beer, I have to say. So overall, quite a smooth beer, this one. Very easy to drink. It's got a nice little bit of wetness to it as well, actually. It's got a nice kind of cleanliness to it. And I've noticed this about the pressure drop beers. They do have, the way they're treating their water, I guess, it just comes across as, a lot of their beers come across as quite wet and quite clean, which I really like. It reminds me a little bit of the Scottish and the Swedish and the Norwegian beers and stuff like this. But yeah, very soft carbonation in this one. In terms of the IBUs of the beer, I think this is probably about 40-ish IBUs, something like that. Yeah, probably about 40 IBUs. It's, as is typical for the New England style, it's not going to blow the head off you in terms of bitterness. Malt base, like I said, very, very soft. It does almost get a little bit sweeter later on because of the oats coming out a little bit more. It's got a wee bit of wheaty bite to it as well, and that in fairness does show its head a little bit more the more you drink of the beer. But yeah, lovely soft malt base to it, a nice bright floral aromaticity, not overly bitter as I said, 40 IBUs, and then just a lovely juicy tropical fruit component. But I really, the more and more that I drink of this, it leans towards that citrusy side of things. So yeah, lovely, lovely beer, this one. Stupidly easy to drink for an 8.5%er, but a lot of these New England IPAs are these days, but definitely quite an old school 2015 type one when I think. It reminds me of, you know, the double Narangi and stuff like that I've had from OO Brewing over in Sweden. So yeah, this is a cracking beer, this one. If you get the chance to try this, you will certainly not be disappointed by it. And like I said earlier, if this is a benchmark for the other beers they're doing, I can see why they're getting the hype. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Lovely beer, this. The Donatella's Disco Night, 8.5% New England Double IPA from Pressure Drop Brewing in Tottenham Hale in the north of London. Lovely stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Pressure Drop. Thank you again for watching. Check out all my social media, check out the brewery's websites and stuff. You can order the beers from the brewery, and you certainly won't be disappointed if you do that. But thank you again for watching. As I say, check out all my social media. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourites are from Pressure Drop Brewing, and do give me some other London brewery recommendations that I can check out. Slàinte, Skål, cheers. The Donatella's Disco Night, 8.5% New England IPA, Pressure Drop Brewing, Tottenham Hale, the north of London, down in England. Cheers. Catch you guys on the next one.